Phil Walter.
Awesome.
We've been doing a few podcasts recently, and I'm losing track of what number we're up to. So can you remember? I thought it was 4 or 5. What was it?
I believe this is our 6th one we're recording right now.
Okay, so this is number 6 podcast, Nancy.
Nice name, don't you think?
Nice, very nice name. Don't know what it means. Don't know what it's all about. But number 6 podcast of Phil Walter's experiments down in Antarctica, Nancy. So let's just move on to talk about some of the characters that populated the Antarctic base at Mawson. Just go through some of them and give their nicknames that you might have had with them. That's one of those.
Nicknames? Let me see. There was George.
George of the Jungle.
We call him sometimes George the Pom. That might not be allowed nowadays, I'm not sure.
George the Pom.
But he was also called Generous George.
Ah.
Reason being, he was in charge of the store.
Right.
Tradition has it that the people in charge of the store didn't want to give you anything. Generous George would give you anything you required if it was in stock. You could ask for anything.
Because it's not like the stock changes, it just goes down, doesn't it?
Well, what we found is old ventiles and things like that would turn to rags because they'd been there for so many years because the storeman wouldn't give them out.
What are ventiles?
Ventiles were windproof, heavy-duty windproof coverings that you wore over the top of everything else.
Okay. Any others?
Yes, there were.
Now, what about this? There's Gloom. There's a couple. We've met a few of these characters before, haven't we?
Yes. Pete Davies was one. He was one of the two ionic physicists. Very hard to say.
The onyx. Yeah, but okay.
Yeah,
They study the upper atmosphere.
They do.
No. So that's what bounces radio waves off the ionosphere.
Yeah, so in those days it was probably more important than what it is nowadays.
Yeah, because the relay, that's how you get long-range radio communications.
Exactly.
Because you didn't have a satellite up above.
Pete had the habit of always skiding about his sex life that he considered to be better than everybody else's on the base.
Wow.
Mind you, as far as we know, it wasn't very good that year.
Well, I hope not.
Yeah.
Was he a bit of a dandy, or was he...
No, I wouldn't call him a dandy.
Actually, that was an interesting point. Do they actually screen for that? If you're a bit effeminate? If you can use that word. Because you wouldn't want a base full of, men with a couple of effeminate...
I do not recall, but it was a long time ago, any questions along those lines.
Along your sexuality.
Yeah. Then, Gloom, as you've already mentioned, he was another character. He was always cracking jokes. Many of them are pretty off-colour. But then most of the jokes down there were off-colour. He was the usual travelling companion I had, not the only one.
The most unusual, you mean?
Oh, yeah. He was a meteorological technician, MET-Tech, who also had to perform observation duties, which cheers him off. Okay. There was one more.
No, hang on a minute. Hang on. What did they call you? What was your nickname?
Peaches.
Just thinking about being called Peaches is like, all sorts of things pop into your head about Peaches. I wouldn't even want to go why.
It was because early in the year, one of the guys saw me scoffing into a can of peaches.
It wasn't just you had peaches on your buttocks or something?
No.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
I think we'll edit that bit out. Yeah.
Okay, right.
But there was another character.
Uh-huh.
I was mentioning before. I was
rudely interrupted. Yes.
Rudely interrupted. Yeah. Nancy.
Nancy? It's one of the blokes called Nancy. That's a bit rude, isn't it? Because you said there's only men on the base.
Yes. Well, there were only men on the base, but we weren't the only. There were females on the base.
Ah.
Yes.
Ah, you mean the dogs?
You got it.
Ah, and Nancy was.
Nancy.
The guy who looked after the dogs.
That was Lars.
Oh, okay.
He would not like you.
What was Lars called? The dog man or
he certainly
husky
wasn't
man?
He certainly wasn't called Nancy.
Well,
he probably named Nancy though. Anyway, Nancy was the cutest and youngest dog born that year.
When was she born? Because this is the interesting.
Late in the year. I can't remember the exact.
Well, you said late in the year, and yet you're saying
Well, I don't know. Late in the year, probably from August, September. That time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cute. Everybody spoiled her. She was always hanging around with her mum, Norma.
Norma. Norma's the big dog, isn't it? She's the
Yes, we've already
queen.
mentioned Norma. Norma was the biggest of the females that were around then. Probably the smartest. She had been a lead dog and still was that year, except when she was pregnant.
Seems like she's pregnant a lot of the time, wasn't she?
Well, she was, because she was a good breeding dog. Because, you know, if you got a dog that good, a female, you want to breed from her. So she was probably ancestor and mother to half the dogs on the team.
Which does beg the worry about incestuous and bloodlines being really affected by the constant breeding with the same female, even with her sons and brothers, and you know that sort of thing.
That could be a problem. Now it's got around to some degree, because they did bring in dogs from the outside from time to time, from what I heard in years past. So just to bring in a bit extra. But the other thing is you got to carefully monitor who's the dad.
Yeah.
Didn't always work.
I think you wrote that the years before they just had a basic gangbang. You just let them go, and whoever got in first was, yeah, good on you, mate.
That did happen.
Yeah, which is a bit.
Now it wasn't intentionally done. It was basically due to slackness. Didn't happen our year because it was carefully policed. But yeah, they had gangbangs.
The sex police, eh? That's
the sex police.
But you got to understand, I suppose, with an isolated population like that, you really have to be, and you want a healthy population of dogs that can really do the job. You really have to monitor what they get up to.
Yes. So we did know exactly they had their breeding underway under Lars, and he made sure the father was known.
So it's like a birth certificate and things like that. You had the father of the dogs.
Well, that's exactly right. And there was, I think we had a few litters. We had a single female. Then we had 2 litters that were mostly males, I think. And then finally we had Nancy.
So you had 4 lots of dogs, 4 breeding dogs over the year.
Yeah. Now there was
That's a lot of puppies.
There was a lot of puppies, and the reason was that it had been something that had been neglected in years before. The previous year it only bred up 1 pup. That was Goff.
1 pup?
1 pup, Goff.
What happened to all the other babies?
They didn't have any others.
1 pup?
Yeah.
That's not unusual for dogs to have just one.
Well, that's what happened.
And Goff's that big goofy dog, isn't it?
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I suppose that there was Lars had set in a plan to get the population healthy, get the population strong, and a reasonable number of dogs within the pack.
Yes.
So how many dogs? So I forgot to ask, how many dogs were in the dog teams when you sort of got there?
There would have been somewhere around the order of 20, I think.
20.
Something.
Then you'd had those breeding. So that's 5, maybe 4, 5, maybe another 15 dogs over that year?
Yeah, there would have been, let's see, 6, about a dozen, maybe just over.
So all of a sudden you've gone from 20 dogs to 32.
Yes.
So what happens when you've got too many dogs? They'd get shot or something.
That's right.
So it wasn't nice about it, was it?
It wasn't nice, and there were some that went that were favourites. There was one called Circlip and a Runto, I think, were the 2 dogs that was everybody's favourite. So really, really stupid dogs, but they were really good pullers. But they'd been around for so long, and they were starting to develop things like arthritis and things like that. So in an environment like that, you don't let old age creep in. You just
bang,
can't.
done.
That's right.
It's a real sad thing, isn't it?
It is sad.
Because, we have a strong affinity to dogs in that sense, because they're, as humans, we've been linked to dogs for a long, long time. And they we know them as like a friend. Yeah. And we name them, and then we go on quite
I know.
ruthlessly, but for good reason, knock them out.
Yeah.
And like I said, do they feed the dogs to the dogs as a bit of a treat?
I don't.
There's a run to
No, I don't think they do.
Well,
But I don't know for sure, because I wasn't involved in any of it.
My thinking is, when you say they bring dogs in from do they bring dogs in from other bases? Was that a thing? Or
well, there weren't other bases that had dogs. There was, I think that year there was one.
So the Russians didn't have dogs?
No.
The Americans didn't have dogs? I think the Americans did for a while.
They probably did in the past. I think there was a few pet dogs in a couple of bases.
Pet dogs?
Yeah, they're just one dog on a base.
Okay.
They didn't, obviously one dog couldn't pull sleds, they were just pets.
Mm.
I know Davis Station had a pet dog. But there just weren't many. Though if you're going to bring in new blood, you'd probably bring it from Greenland or somewhere up there.
Oh, so you'd actually import them from over there. You wouldn't have a dog colony in Australia that would be sort of like a...
That's possible.
Part of the Antarctic survey team.
The original dogs were bred in Melbourne, I think, from French dogs that were going to bring them down. Another story.
It's interesting because, you've got an isolated population that are breeding quite regularly, obviously, because once they're in season, that's it, they're on. There's no stopping them.
That's right. So, it was a problem, and they addressed it as best they could.
Yeah, because you can't get an overpopulation. You can't get an inbreeding population. So there's all sorts of really interesting considerations to think about. We've been discussing the breeding program with the dogs and the fact that Larson was actually quite an expert at trying to get the dogs into a more healthy state biologically and genetically, and obviously selected strong males and strong females. Go ahead and tell us how these things happen. I mean, usually they just let them go and whoever gets in, good on them.
You must know how it happens.
I have been told, but dogs may be doing it differently.
Well, there was a few little things different. Now, it turns out the breeding cages...
Cages?
That's what... Well, if you didn't want free-for-alls, you had to separate them somehow.
Okay, so how big's the cage?
Oh, they were quite large, very large, probably 6 metres by 6 metres.
Seductive female in the corner. And...
Yeah. Anyway, this cage is just outside the window.
Of your office?
No, of the kitchen.
Of the kitchen?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, paint the picture. You got a cage with what? 1 or 2 dogs or 3 dogs or...
Well, in this
4?
case, this particular day, it was 2. A male and a female. Don't ask me which ones.
So were they left in there for like a couple of weeks or so, or whatever?
Until something happens.
Okay, all right.
Now, here was the catch. The male was not interested.
Oh, and this
particular time, the female's barking and carrying
that's probably
on.
why. She's just a nagging old woman. And you go, I'm not having to go with you.
Nagging old women don't want what she wanted.
Wow. And usually they all get a bit coy about it and say, no, all right then.
Maybe it's because he knew that we were all watching, I don't know. So, and there was one other time.
It's a bit personal, isn't it?
This is a bit personal, yeah. 2 dogs in there, male and female. They were going at it, having a great time. Then they thought, righto, we're finished now. But they couldn't pull apart.
So...
This was...
Because they literally, gets a bit desperate. So they're like locked in behind each other.
Yeah.
But I've seen them, they actually turn face away from each other. So
that's like how this was. That's how this was. It wasn't your traditional doggy style.
No, it starts off being doggy style and then it changes. And I think it's going to have to put an X rating on this one.
It's an X rated.
Or a D rating.
We were all at the window laughing. We thought this was a huge joke. It must have taken them 10 minutes or something like that before they finally separated. So these are the things that can happen when you breed.
But that is quite normal for dogs though, once they get in. Because that's, like I said, my dogs we had in the tropics. They get like that, and it literally was a tug of war to get out. And if you feel like the man dog is in a lot of trouble, he's got caught, and there's no way out until she releases him.
Yeah, well, something like that happened here. I'd never seen it before, I got to admit, so it was all new to me, and I don't think most of the others, if not all of them, had ever seen it before. So we all thought it was a huge joke.
So you got 18 men looking at these dogs, doing what dogs do naturally, going, yeah! And then after a while going, Jesus, what's happened there, poor things?
It didn't look natural seeing them stuck. But anyway, that's one of the incidences of the breeding.
Dogs breed during as a season. Yep. So what I'm saying is you would have multiple breeding pairs.
Oh, yeah.
Norma would be in there. The poor dogs, the poor male dogs sitting there, Mummy!
Norma had been around for many, many years, and I was quite surprised at how, at her age, she was able to have another pup. And do pups and do what dogs have to do to have the pups. But she was a sturdy old thing, was Norma.
So just as a side, how long do the dogs live for in that sort of environment? I mean,
I think they could go up to about 13 years. But if a dog down there lives to 13 years, like Sir Clip and Arunta did, that's an old dog.
Yeah, and that's time to,
Yeah.
they have to be done, put away quickly and nicely. Well,
Yes.
quickly anyway. All right, so let's get back to Nancy. Nancy was one of Norma's babies.
The last one. I think it would have been the last one. Norma was getting pretty old and probably close to past breeding age, but she did get one pup that year. Now, Nancy used to enjoy playing with the other pups, and she tended to dominate them somewhat. Nobody minded. They loved to play outside my office. There was a nice clear area.
But they were sort of free and fancy free to just roam around the place themselves. They didn't need to be trapped to the line.
The line. No, they get to an age where they're just about fully grown, if not fully grown at that stage. They would go to the line. And every dog hated it. That took a long time to get used to it.
Yeah, well, when you've been roaming around for a couple of months or whatever.
They would howl and moan and groan.
Yeah.
The pups were still free at this stage. Nancy, being the youngest, was free for the longest.
So I suppose having pups running around the base was really quite a nice thing.
It was, yeah.
You know, you could pet them and you play with them and everything. They were quite happy. But would they have to go back to their mum to get milk and things like that when they were younger?
Oh, yeah.
And she would have been on the line, would she?
When the dogs were breeding, they had just a special place to live during that time. It wasn't on the dog line.
So what was so special about Nancy? I know you said she's cute and lovely and like that.
Well, Nancy grew up.
Now, you're talking about a 6-month-old pup, aren't you, really? Within the time frame.
Yeah, they grow up fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Nancy grew up to be rather promiscuous. And one of her hobbies was going up to the dog line and staying just outside the range of dogs and being a temptress.
So would she literally saunter up?
Yes, exactly.
Saunter up and go, hello, boys.
Yeah, she'd drive them wild.
Yeah.
Loved it.
So it's not just human people doing that. That dogs like
Dogs do that too.
Wow,
at least these ones.
such a shocker.
Yeah.
And Mum didn't tell her off?
Might have done. I couldn't understand.
Yeah.
What they were saying.
But she would just walk up and down the line, just sniffing everybody.
Just go. Well, not sniffing because then she's in range.
No, what I mean, from a distance.
She's smart enough, probably at that age, to just keep enough distance that nothing never happened to her.
Oh. So she obviously got a bit of a reputation then within the dog line. She's a 6-month-old dog. She's learning to, play her charms on the other.
Yes.
What about the female dogs? Would they get upset with her too?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, just the men.
Yeah,
They
did.
They all got
Now, Nancy could create a bit of a problem at times. In fact, downright dangerous problems. It happened one day. We jumped on the sled. We thought, we go for a bit of a jaunt up the coast, heading east. Okay, so
heading towards Australia from Madagascar.
Sort of, yeah, if you want. So we got on there, saddled them all up, all's good, nice.
No, you didn't saddle them up, did you? You tied them up.
We connected them to the
you're putting a saddle on the dog. You guys, it's really just not nice. Yeehaw, Grandma.
Pedantic. We got the dogs all connected.
Was this in the fan shape or the hand shape?
Always a fan shape.
Right, the fan shape, yeah.
Yeah. The only time we used the fan...
The single line?
The single line was at that very first dog trip to Rumdoodle.
Yeah. No, because I watched a show the other night about husky racing in Alaska. And, they breed different kinds of dogs up there for to do it, but they're not huskies per se.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, yeah.
I know huskies are still a favourite breed for sled pulling up there.
Oh, yeah, but these were just like Alsatian, German Shepherd type. They looked more wolf-like.
No, well, some breeds of huskies do look very wolf-like. The ones we had, I think they were better looking, actually. They're better looking huskies than the average ones I've seen up north. Now, these dogs obviously thought Nancy was a really good-looking dog.
Oh.
Yeah. So we're heading on.
So what colour was she? There you go.
She was white.
Yeah.
With a few black patches.
Okay, cool. Okay.
And one of those black patches, I think, was over one eye, which just added to
a little bit. Okay.
We're heading along.
Liked attention. She liked attention from you. She liked attention from the dogs. She liked attention from her mum. So she was really, really enjoyed being the centre of attention.
Miss popularity.
Yeah.
We're heading along. Then over on the shore, which isn't probably about 100 metres away, this little head pops up behind a rock.
Yeah.
Dan, the lead dog, spots this head. You know who it was, don't you?
No, it was Jemima, wasn't it? It was Jemima?
Well, close, but no, it was Nancy, the dreaded Nancy.
I feel sorry for dreaded Nancy. She's just asking for attention, but she doesn't know what kind of attention she's going to get.
Well, this is something I wonder about.
Yeah.
Dan does a right-hand turn. All the other dogs, of course, follow him.
But they're not all male dogs on that line, are they?
Yes, they were.
Okay.
And they're charging straight to the shore, the rocky shore.
Right. It must be a bit of a shock to you. All of a sudden, you just go, yeah, everything's going good, and then we're going this way.
It was a shock, all right, because we could see what was going to happen.
But did you spot Nancy as well?
Yes, we saw her.
Okay. So everybody saw her, and then all of a sudden, we start moving that
I
way.
leapt onto the back of the sled where the brake was.
Because that's that weird little hook
thing hanging off the back that you stand on and with your weight, and the sort of a hooky thing.
Or an anchor.
An anchor hits the ice to stop you. Well, it didn't stop us, did it? We kept on going.
I'm surprised you didn't flip because of the way the basically left-hand turn.
Well, I suppose it could happen. Fortunately, that didn't happen. Maybe it would have been a good thing if it did.
Yeah, because he might have slowed him down a bit.
Yeah. So we're heading down there. I'm on the brake with all my weight. Gloom is looking wide-eyed. I'm looking. The shore's coming at us. Oh.
That's okay. It's the shore. It's a shore. You're going to the shore. You're on the ice.
The shore consists of ice. Then right near the shore, there's tide cracks. There's rumpled ice.
So it's going to be damn bumpy.
Really, probably about 3 or 4 feet of really rough ice beyond which is solid rock.
So it's going to be an absolute a smash.
A smash. We're heading for a smash.
Yeah. So what's the stop word?
Whoa.
Okay, but it probably got lost in there. Whoa, whoa.
Start going as mush.
Yep.
Stop as whoa. They didn't. All they could fix on was Nancy.
Are they all barking their heads off?
Oh yeah, they were going to have a merry old time, so they thought. Fortunately, just as we're getting to shore, it slowed. The brake started to work. I don't know if Dan's instincts for survival kicked in, but one way or another, we stopped just short of the shore.
What do you mean his instincts for survival? He wouldn't care. He was fixed over
Those
on the
dogs have a very, very sharp survival instinct. He would have possibly, I don't know, saw, we are heading for disaster and started to ease up.
Okay.
And of course the brakes bit.
Yeah.
So we go,
whew. So the dog's still leaning into their harnesses?
They were up until they finally stopped. Nancy thought this was a great joke. He's barking, and of course we're up there then with the whip between the dogs and the shore and Nancy, who then merrily skipped away, very carefree.
You didn't tell him Nancy to bugger off. You know, get off, Nancy, go away!
We could have done. I think we probably did yell at her, get out of here. Anyway, she was happy.
So she just sort of turned, tail in the air, and just sort of flipped away.
Exactly.
And the dogs go,
yeah.
So did they settle down after that? Or
did that? Well, you know, Pete, what they did. Come on.
They had a cup of tea and just, worked out their losses, or no? They just turned on each other and went, yeah.
Yes, they had an all-in brawl, which is their favourite pastime.
It seems like the all-in brawls just follow you around. Yeah. They just know, it's only Phil.
Yeah.
Sorry, Peaches. It's only Peaches and Gloom. Yeah. We could have a fight now.
Yeah, when we set off, we were so disciplined with them, no problem. The whole discipline had gone to the wind.
Gone to the dogs.
Gone to the dogs. Oh, gee. Yeah. Anyway, we did get them finally settled down, untangled all the leads, and off we went. But that is the danger of having a promiscuous bitch on the base.
It's not very nice. You know, when you told me that story, I was really frightened for Nancy, because I thought Nancy was going to get done over by
Nancy,
five or six dogs. It's not going to be a nice sight. So she twirling around like that, and then realised, oh dear.
Nancy was too young to know what could have happened.
Yeah.
She just thought it was great. As you say, she was a real attention seeker, and she sure got it.
Yeah. So, I mean, what was the deal? How did you deal with that as a base? Because, I mean, that's a real potential for some serious fighting between the dogs.
It was a source of laughter and mirth when we recounted the tale. Nothing was done about it because what could you do except next time you go out on the dogs, make sure Nancy's nowhere nearby.
Yeah, or lined up, tied up somewhere. Or
yes, exactly.
So what did happen to Nancy by the time you left? Because she would have been a 1-year-old, nearly a 1-year-old by the time you guys were leaving.
Oh, I don't know. I can't remember.
Oh, jeez.
She was out of the cute stage, so we lost interest and the dogs got more interested.
Oh, of course. So she would have been the first lot of litters for next year. So how did you feel when the last day or so before you had to leave? You knew you were going to leave and you knew probably you're never going to come back again. When you've got all those dogs that you've developed a relationship with, I reckon that's pretty hard. That's like really...
It was. And most of us, those of us who worked the dogs, went up there, and within the last day or two of being there, we made a point of going up and patting them and making.
They look at you and go, "Oh, not another one."
Could have been.
He's off again.
It wouldn't be everyone because a lot of people never used the dogs.
Yeah, is that because they were scared of them, or they just didn't want to bother to try and learn?
They couldn't be bothered.
Yeah, because I mean that's the hard thing. Is it seems to me that by that time, 1976, as you said, there wasn't that many dog teams in the Antarctic. There was a few pets, etc., etc. But, I would have thought by then it was sort of at its peak in terms of people breeding good populations of dogs, working them well, looking after them well. You got a really good... And obviously, towards the 80s, they started to say, right, we're getting rid of them all.
I mean, we had an expert in dog handling our year, but most years that never happened. So
next year, Lars wasn't guaranteed to be there again.
Oh, no, he wasn't going to go down the second year. Whether he's been back or not, I don't know. One of my ex-expeditioners, Gil Barton, has been keeping in touch with him, so I'll
he must
ask.
be a pretty old fella now.
Yeah.
Lars. But it just seems like it's a very typical program where, it's a 1-year exercise. You do a lot in that year, but the next year, somebody else comes down and basically reinvents the wheel.
People didn't stay down for longer than a year. That's with Australia. It was 1 year or maybe as much as 15 months, and then you were back.
Would the Russians
you could
the
come
same?
down again. No, the Russians
Still have had a bit longer.
Yeah, they generally stayed down for 2 years.
Okay, because you said that the Russian bases there were quite any open windows they had flowers and things growing on the inside, whereas you guys were just like still eating bully beef and.
There was a lot we could have learnt from the Russians.
Because long-term, living in that sort of environment.
We'll do another podcast on Russians, the time I visited a Russian Antarctic base.
The vodka.
We might do that next time because a lot of people expressed interest in that one.
But I suppose all the data you collected was kept in some sort of archive.
Yes, there is records of everything that happened that year of any significance.
All right, so... That's the Nancy one. This is the Nancy one, people. So Phil's given me the wind up now. So let's just end the podcast there. Thank you, Phil. Is there any other thing you'd like to say about Nancy? She's a beautiful pup, promiscuous. Well, she wasn't promiscuous. She never got laid while you were there, as far as you know.
As far as I know, no.
But they were waiting for it for next year.
Yeah, I reckon she did score a lot the following year.
Yeah. All right, but she came from good stock, though.
Good stock, yes.
All right, on that note, let's end that one. Thank you, Phil Walton.
Very welcome, Pete.